Hola chicos, ¿cómo están? I hope you're ready to do a little bit of a mini grammar lesson today. We're going to take a few minutes and review a verb that you've actually seen before. We first learned this in Spanish 1, we practiced it again in Spanish 2, and we're going to come back and talk about it this year in Spanish 3 as well. So right now, you should have out in front of you a copy of the notes that Senor passed out to you on Wednesday, because we're going to go through and take a few notes here, see some model sentences, and then practice a little bit with this verb today. So we're going to call this el grupo gustar, y es diferente, es muy diferente. For example, here's a use of gustar. It says, a mí me gusta la clase de español. And these gustar-like verbs, they behave differently from any other verbs that we really work with in Spanish. You know, why is that a mí there? Why is the me there? Why is it gusta, not something else? So over the next 5 minutes or so, we're going to review what you've learned already and practice this skill a little bit today, because it is really easy to have some mistakes come up with gustar-like verbs. So go ahead and pull out a lápiz or a bolígrafo, and first off, we're going to jot some vocab down. So you should see in front of you, again, the chart on your notes, so we're going to go through and jot down what some of these words mean. So chances are you know most of these already, but if not, again, we'll jot these down. Gustar, we know, means to be pleasing or to like. And we're going to pause for just a second here. I want you to kind of look down a little bit to about halfway down your notes, and you'll see that there's an asterisk there. We have to be careful when we use the verb gustar to express likes and dislikes related to people. Gustar really is used with things or people that are perceived as professionals, such as professors, presidents, or etc. So when you use gustar to talk about these professionals, you mean that you respect their work. So if you were to say, sí, me gusta mi profesor de historia, you know, you're using it to say that you respect the work of your history professor. You like that person because of the work that he's doing with you in your class. We have to be a little bit careful, though, when we use gustar talking about people whose relationship with you is other than just professional, because it can mean in some countries that you're attracted to that person. So if you were to say, me gusta Maria, that could actually come across as saying, I'm attracted to Maria. So to avoid any confusion, it's best to probably use caer bien and caer mal with people, or llevarse bien or llevarse mal. So going on to go back to our chart here, caer bien and caer mal. Caer bien means to like a person, and caer mal is to dislike a person, although you can also use these two with food. If you use caer bien with food, it's like saying this food sits well with you or it agrees with you. Caer mal with food would be like saying it doesn't sit well with you or it doesn't agree with you. So moving on our list, we also see our next verb is importar, and we want to jot that down. Importar means to be important to or to matter. Aburrir means to be bored by or to bore. And then we see encantar. Encantar means to love, but it's love as in like love that's on a bumper sticker. Like imagine you saw an I love New York bumper sticker. Encantar, it does mean to love, but again, think of it again as bumper sticker love. Really, this type of love is different than sentimental love. If you wanted to say, like I love my parents, we really wouldn't use encantar. We would use the verb querer or amar. Those verbs would be better used to express, I really love them. It's coming from my heart. Encantar, again, is more like, I love New York, or I love dogs. I love Jamba Juice. Things that are really not like trying to say I love somebody from my heart. So we'll use encantar to practice that way. Fascinar means to be fascinated by or to be fascinating, so we'll jot that down on your handout. And then we have three more. Interesar is to be interested in or to interest. Parecer is to seem. And molestar is to be a bother or to be bothersome. So these are gustar-like verbs that we've seen before, but before we kind of get into the grammar, I just wanted to make sure you had those down in case you'd forgotten any of those from the last couple of years. So let's talk about kind of how we use gustar. And if you kind of look down about halfway on your notes, you'll see there's another chart down here. And the question is, what are the indirect object pronouns that we use with gustar in sentences? Well, if you can think for a second, you probably have seen these before. I want you to think back to when you say things like, I like to go swimming, or Juan likes to go swimming. We start hearing words like a mí, me, a ti, te. Well, these are my indirect object pronouns. So if we think about our chart, let's jot these down. We have me, te, and le. nos, os, and les. And these 6 pronouns are the pronouns we're going to use every single time we use one of these Gustar-like verbs as we're going to practice this year. All right? And our next question to kind of answer before we put all this together is, really, there are only 2 forms of Gustar that we're going to use. It's possible to use other forms, but we're going to practice just this year in Spanish 3 with 2 forms of Gustar. We're going to practice using either gusta or gustan, because really those are the 2 forms that are going to come up most in the way, again, that we're going to practice this year. The same thing is true with all those verbs we wrote down a second ago. So it could be molesta or molestan, encanta or encantan. Really, those are the only forms we're going to use this year in Spanish 3 is we use these verbs to express our opinion. So how do we kind of put all this together? Well, the Gustar-like verbs, gustar, caer bien, caer mal, any of those verbs that we're going to work with over the next several days here to review, it comes down to 2 parts, all right? So, I think I skipped a hell of a bit on the notes. We can use the Gustar-like verbs in any tense, not just the present tense. All of our examples are going to be in the present tense, but we'll see other tenses as we go along throughout the school year. So, going back to where we were a second ago, how do we actually use these types of sentences? How do we construct them? Well, if you look on the left-hand side of your notes on the very bottom, we see that a mí, but there's a blank line next to it. A mí is always going to agree with this indirect object pronoun me. All right, a mí is the indirect object, me is our indirect object pronoun, so those 2 are going to match up. So a mí me, and then on our model here we say gustan las enchiladas. Well, the a mí and the me, that part in red, those 2 have to agree. So we've got to use me because it agrees with a mí. All right? Gustan has really nothing to do with what's in red on your screen. Gustan is going to agree with las enchiladas because las enchiladas is the subject of our sentence. And in this case, the subject is plural, las enchiladas. So our verb, gustan, also has to be plural. Now, if we look down, the next model says a ti. Well, we don't want to use me again because now the a ti has to match up with that te, what's in the you form. So a ti te gusta la enchilada. We see that gustan from the previous example now is gusta because it has to be singular to agree with the word la enchilada. So a ti te gusta la enchilada. The part in red has nothing to do with the part in green. They're 2 separate parts. All right, how about a ella? A ella le encantan las gaseosas. And gaseosas are like sodas. So a ella goes along with le, and then encantan goes along with gaseosas. Those both have to match up. All right, a Juan le gusta comer los frisco melt. So again, that le is agreeing with Juan, and the gusta agrees with my infinitive here. It's because we're using an infinitive, it'll take the singular form of gustar. A Juan y a mí nos interesan los libros. So the nos agrees with a Juan y a mí. Interesan agrees with los libros since los libros is plural. Another example, a Juan y a Ana les importa el dinero. So since we have a Juan y a Ana, we have 2 people here. That pronoun has to be les, and then importa is singular because dinero is just one thing. So I know you've seen this before. We've studied in Spanish 1 and Spanish 2, but sometimes these Gustar-like verbs cause some confusion, and we're going to be using these next week when we work on creating our first little project in Spanish 3 class. So let's kind of put this together and practice a little bit. So on your screen now, there's no more notes to take. You can put your pen or your pencil down. I've got a question up here, and it says, a Pedro importa el dinero. Well, our indirect object pronoun is missing. So think for a second, what pronoun should go there to agree with a Pedro? Hopefully you said le. All right, a Pedro le importa el dinero. Why is that le there? Because the le matches up with Pedro. Importa has to do with dinero. Let's try a couple like this. A nosotros gusten los tacos. What pronoun do you think should go there? Hopefully you came up with nos. A nosotros nos gustan los tacos. And again, the nos matches up with nosotros. Let's try another one. A mí caen bien los estudiantes. Our pronoun should be me. A mí me caen bien los estudiantes. That a mí goes along with the me. All right, oh, there's a typo here that says te. It should say a ti. Te importa sacar buenas notas. Let's just go ahead and fix that so we don't have any confusion. All right, a ti te importa sacar buenas notas. All right, a ti te importa sacar buenas notas. Let's try it a little bit a different way. Let me give you now the first part of the sentence. A mí me los exámenes. And the verb we want to use is molestar. So which form of molestar do we need? Molesta or molesta? Hopefully you came up with molestan. A mí me molestan los exámenes, because exámenes is plural, so molestan has to be plural. Let's try another one. A Juan y a Sara les el pescado. Which form of gustar do we need? Gusta or gusta? Hopefully you're saying gusta, because gusta is going to agree with the subject. The subject is pescado, and since that's singular, gusta also has to be singular. Let's try another one. A Pedro le los carros. Le fascina or le fascinan? Hopefully you said fascinan, because our verb is plural to match up with our subject. So that's our little mini lesson on gustar. Now I'm going to have you go back to Canvas on our calendar, and there'll be a practice quiz waiting for you in Canvas to practice, like we just practiced these last few slides, to see how you're doing with gustar. Gracias.